Good morning. Welcome to Sasakawa Peace Foundation USA Policy Briefing Series. Before I begin the event, I'd like to offer my heartfelt sympathy to Japanese people who've been suffering from torrential rains and floods. I am Satohiro Akimoto, President and Chairman of Sasakawa Peace Foundation USA. I am delighted to have you all. Sasakawa USA is a nonpartisan 501c3 organization dedicated to deepening the understanding of and strengthening the relationship between the US and Japan, mainly in the Asia-Pacific context, for the good of the free and open international community. Today's topic is New Force Design for the Marine Corps and its implication to the U.S. Japan Alliance. This is an invitation event, but close to 130 people have signed up, including current policymakers, defense strategists, defense leaders, executive of defense industries, member of the media, and academia, both in the United States and in Japan. It is a reflection of the importance of the subject matter relating to strategic posture and force projection of the US and Japan in the region. So thank you very much for your interest. Before I begin the event, let me quickly go over meeting protocol. First, today's event is on the record and is being recorded. Video and recap of the event will be posted on our website. Second, how to change screen view? Please manually change between speaker to gallery views. Look for rectangular black boxes on the right side. Third, how to ask questions during Q&A? Please use raise hand, found under participant list. When you are called upon, please unmute your own microphone. So let's begin the event. We have three perfect speakers. All of them are known to policy communities, both in Japan and the United States. Three gentlemen know each other very well and worked closely in the framework of U.S. Japan Alliance, particularly in the Southern and Western theater of Japan, and also Asia Pacific in general. Obviously, General Gregson and General Nicholson served in the U.S. Marine Corps, and General Bansho served in Japan Self-Defense Forces. Today's featured speaker is General Chip Gregson. He will present his view on new force design and its implication to the U.S. Japan Alliance for about 25 minutes and set the stage for discussion to follow. Chip, or General Gregson, will be followed by General Lawrence Nicholson as the first discussant. General Nicholson will be followed by General Bansho as the second discussant. Then I'm going to open up the floor for Q&A. General Gregson, floor is yours.
Dr. Akimoto, thank you for the kind introduction, and let me hasten to add my voice to the condolences for Japan on the flooding in Kumamoto and surrounding areas. Good evening to friends in Japan. It's a late evening, and good morning to those on this side of the dateline. Let me get the usual disclaimer out of the way. My views are my own. I don't speak for the Marine Corps or any other part of the US government. And I thank the Sasakawa Peace Foundation USA for the invitation to talk on this issue. Nearly a year ago, General David H. Berger became Commandant of the U.S. Marine Corps. His initial planning guidance of July 2019 declared that force design was his top priority. The others were warfighting, education and training, core values, and command and leadership. His force design vision was shaped by many energetic exercises and war games over the preceding years, modeling emerging Chinese and Russian capabilities. His vision draws heavily from the conclusions of Secretaries of Defense Ash Carter and Jim Mattis. He also drew guidance from the bipartisan National Defense Strategy Commission report. These include our conventional deterrence is crumbling, America's competitive edge has eroded in every domain of warfare and continues to do so. Most dire, America's military superiority has eroded to a dangerous degree, and that the US military could lose the next state versus state war that it fights. General Berger said Marines must operate inside actively contested maritime spaces in support of fleet operations, and that the current force is not organized, trained, or equipped to support the naval force operating in contested maritime spaces, facilitating sea control, or executing distributed maritime operations. This was not just General Berger's opinion. General Neller, his immediate predecessor, announced similar conclusions. General Berger put his focus on maintaining persistent naval forward presence to enable sea control and denial operations in a way that defeats persistent, effective enemy surveillance, long-range precision fires, electronic warfare, cyber warfare, and superior numbers. Years ago, the central thought of this concept, land-based maritime strike and sea control operations, was stated very succinctly by Lieutenant General Bansho at the U.S. Council on Foreign Relations. While pointing to a chart of Northeast Asia, he highlighted Japan's location relative to China and said, "This is Japan. We are already within range. We need air-sea land battle." Indeed, they and we do. U.S. Japan Alliance strategy and operational concepts must ensure sea control and denial to protect Japan's territory, national interest, and people. The ways and means must support that strategy and its operational concepts. In March of this year, General Berger issued Force Design 2030. Let me stress that this is not a design for the Marine Corps to fight alone. Quite the opposite. The Marine Corps is part of our nation's naval forces, organized and equipped to be the landward extension of seaborne power. Marines will fight as part of the joint force, which in turn must be part of a tightly integrated U.S. Japan Alliance force. Force Design 2030 complements and enhances Indo-PACOM's efforts across all domains and service components. Unlike most government pronouncements, General Berger's guidance and Force Design 2030 actually gained wide readership, and it engendered much comment and critique. It embodies distinctive change, always hard in successful organizations that live by doctrine and standards. It responds to our national strategy's priority on Asia. It meets the threat in Asia while maintaining capability to meet other demands. It recognizes reality, specifically the rapid expansion of China's area denial capabilities, coupled with its pivot to the sea as the primary front in a renewed great power competition, have fundamentally transformed the environment in which the U.S. military will operate for the foreseeable future. For the first time in a generation, sea control is no longer the unquestioned prerogative of the United States. The focus of effort is on the need to be a key element of the naval campaign as part of the joint and allied fight against China. Force Design 2030 proposes an agile, mobile, and widely distributed maritime strike capability from the land. It will have long-range guided weapons and be totally networked and integrated with the maneuver and fires of U.S. and allied forces on, under, and over the sea, in space, and cyberspace. Widely distributed units will be compact, approximately 120 Marines and sailors, mobile and agile, deployed throughout the first island chain. These forces will be survivable, effective, and resilient. Their long-range fires will integrate with the fires and maneuver of U.S. and allied ships and aircraft. The initial long-range fires weapon of choice will be the 100 nautical mile naval strike missile fired from a modified HIMARS launcher. This is the same missile the Navy will have, ensuring interoperability and simplifying logistics with the goal of ensuring sea control. Few observers are neutral. Change is always controversial in successful organizations. Military organizations are responsible for the controlled application of deadly force, and with their needed emphasis on doctrine and standardized ways of doing things, they are especially resistant to change. Force Design 2030 assumes no increase in resources. In other words, the Marine Corps must pay for the new capabilities. The $2 trillion and climbing pandemic response bill and major healthcare costs, along with the major recession, will exert continuing downward pressure on U.S. defense resources. Force Design 2030 recommends difficult divestment of capabilities less relevant to our national strategy and Asia's priority. Slide on, please. This is the only slide I will use, and it shows a summary of the changes. Key to sea control and sea denial with maneuver and fires tightly integrated within the same battle space with the maneuver and fires of air and naval surface force fires. Infantry forces are reduced by 3 battalions. Reductions are also taken in armor and aviation to generate needed resources. The new capabilities include increased expeditionary long-range precision fires, medium to long-range air defense systems, and short-range point defense air defense systems. High-endurance, long-range unmanned aerial systems with intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance and attack capabilities, and disruptive and less lethal capabilities appropriate for countering malign activities by actors pursuing maritime gray zone strategies. Slide off, please. So what does this mean for our alliance? Simply put, Force Design 2030, in company with Indo-PACOM initiatives and those of other services, presents a signal opportunity to align U.S. force posture and capabilities with Japan's efforts already underway to enhance our defense of Japan, specifically the Southwest Islands, or Nansei Shoto, in the East China Sea. It will go a long way to restoring conventional deterrence. It will make a great contribution to the sea control necessary to achieve successful conflict termination. A widely distributed, mobile, agile, and operationally resilient posture across Japan's entire archipelago will provide network sensors and shooters that can help ensure Japan's missile defense. The Marine Corps will enhance its contribution as America's Naval Expeditionary Force and America's Naval Expeditionary Force and Readiness, while simultaneously modernizing its force to meet the demands of the operating environment described in our national security strategy. It will be an effective response to enemy capabilities in surveillance, precision firepower, weapons range, and sheer force numbers. It responds to the fact that Japan lies well within the range of Chinese precision firepower, and it responds to the fact that sea control will be contested. The National Defense Strategy recognizes this as the precision strike environment. The forces in Asia are termed the contact force because they will be well within weapons range at the start of any conflict. Note that this is fundamentally different than the U.S. force projection concepts of the past 30 years. The active defense nature of Force Design 2030 fits well with Japan's concept of self-defense forces, allowing a major strengthening of collective self-defense across the alliance. The fight will come to Japan. Japan does not need to go abroad in search of enemies. It will strengthen our conventional deterrence, support peace through strength, and increase our resilience to China's gray zone coercion. This allows forces on land to make a meaningful, perhaps decisive, contribution to gain and maintain sea superiority. Active Japanese self-defense force integration and Japanese industrial cooperation will accelerate implementation. Force Design 2030, developed in close consultation with the Indo-Pacific Command. Indo-PACOM's recent Section 1253 assessment report titled Regain the Advantage, which was demanded by Congress, states, quote, in order to change the calculus of our adversary, we must deny their ability to control the air and the sea around the first island chain. Force Design 2030 is aligned with Indo-PACOM's Regain the Initiative plan and the Pacific Deterrence Initiative recently launched by our Congress. Regain the Initiative has 4 components: joint force lethality, force design and posture, strengthen allies and partners, and exercises, experimentation, and innovation. Relevant to Japan, Regain the Advantage calls for highly survivable precision strike networks along the first island chain featuring increased quantities of allied ground-based weapons. It specifically calls for the Naval Strike Missile for the Marine Corps' High Mobility Artillery Rocket System, or HIMARS. In future, such systems will likely include multimodal missiles fired from standard shipping containers, aiding mobility, concealment, and easing logistics support. Exploitation of the capabilities of unmanned aerial systems, unmanned surface and subsurface vessels, and smart sea mines lying in wait will add to the resilience of this operational concept. Many unmanned aerial systems will be capable of vertical takeoff and landing, reducing our dependence on fixed runways. Unmanned missile and torpedo ships, both surface and subsurface, are proven and can be a major addition to the strength of our deployment throughout the archipelago. Allies and partners will be strengthened through a mission partner environment for resilient, redundant, joint, and multinational command and control. An Oceania Fusion Center and an Indo-Pacific Maritime Coordination Center will add contextual analytics and computing model assessments. Exercises, experiments, and innovation will be expanded and accelerated to integrate weapons and capabilities into new warfighting concepts that will deter the adversary and put us in a position to win if conflict comes. Logistics and security enablers will create additional dispersal locations, airfield battle damage repair capabilities, munitions generation, and fuel storage. Despite the lack of a formal defense treaty with Taiwan, such advancements throughout the first island chain can be readily adapted there. Force Design 2030 reinforces Japan's already emerging strategy of ensuring sea control and denial throughout the Japanese archipelago. Over 20 years ago, Japan noted China's rapidly expanding military power, including force projection capabilities by air, sea, and land. China now constantly projects power to intimidate and provoke Japan and to discourage other Asian nations from protesting Chinese aggressive activities. Chinese aerial penetrations of Japanese airspace continue at high Cold War levels. Seaborne threats to the Senkaku Islands by fishing vessels and maritime militia ships backed by PLA Navy vessels challenge Japan's Coast Guard. Fishing and maritime survey vessels from other Asian nations are often harassed, damaged, and even sunk. In 2014, China mounted a massive dredging operation to create new features in the Spratly Islands of the South China Sea. Despite declaring they would not be militarized, they now feature 3,000-meter runways, deep water ports, and military infrastructure. The Wall of Sand, as it was called, has now become a wall of SAMs, surface-to-air missiles. China declared, quote, undisputed historical sovereignty, end quote, over the entire South China Sea. Chinese air and sea intrusions into Taiwan's air and sea space impose costs there. Philippine fishermen and Philippine territory in the South China Sea are subject to continuing Chinese presence and pressure. China's destruction of Hong Kong autonomy, the conflict with India in the Galwan Valley, and brutal suppression of Uyghurs in Xinjiang show they recognize no limits. Hong Kong is the foreground of a very global fight, authoritarianism versus democracy. All of this threatens the sea control that is essential for Japan's security and deterrence. In response, Japan began expanding its defense capabilities. One new capability is the development of Joint Self-Defense Force amphibious capability to maneuver Japanese forces among Japan's vast archipelago in active defense of its territory and interest. The Amphibious Rapid Deployment Brigade is one early manifestation of Japan's emerging capabilities. Another new capability is the strategic positioning of ground self-defense force units with anti-ship capabilities at key locations in the Southwest Islands. As Force Design 2030 and Indo-PACOM's Regain the Initiative plan are implemented, Japanese and US forces operating along the first island chain, especially along the Japanese archipelago, will be operating within a thoroughly integrated operational concept to ensure sea and air control, effective deterrence, and defense. This will ensure a truly effective collective defense of Japan, restore conventional deterrence, and reinforce gray zone resistance and resilience. Bases are always a topic in Japan. The existence of our bases, especially the combined bases like Iwakuni, White Beach, and Misawa, transmit a profound, necessary political message of common vital interest, solidarity, and mutual defense. These bases grew in response to the Korean War and the emergence of the Cold War. In those days, China and North Korea had no power projection capability. The bases were sanctuary from which we deployed. The growth of Chinese and North Koreans' weapons capabilities mean the safe sanctuary is gone. Bases are now, and will remain for some time, the most effective and affordable way to develop and maintain forces, but we must exploit our presence in these bases to greatly expand our combined US-Japan training. Training must also be done in Guam, the Commonwealth of the Marianas, and the compact states of Palau, the Marshalls, and the Federated States of Micronesia. The goal must be to establish a presence in these areas and develop combined command infrastructure capable of instant analysis of data and of making decisions at machine speed. But we must be able to fight from other places. The bases are no longer the sanctuary. As Force Design 2030 develops, we must learn how to maintain deployed, rotational, and ready forces across the first island chain supported from our bases. The strength of forces so deployed can be adjusted as threat conditions and effective deterrence demand. Rapid deployment of all forces from the bases upon alert will be important. Industry is already proposing new, smaller, faster vessels for amphibious operations in support of these types of concepts. A stern landing vessel is one of the many promising designs accessible on YouTube. Force Design 2030 and other initiatives within Indo-PACOM and Japanese efforts will require continuous examination and analysis through rigorous automation-aided wargaming as they move forward. Emerging conflict domains, space and cyber among them, add enormous complexity to our security challenges. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, 5G networking, quantum mechanics, cyber weapons, and additive manufacturing are all much more common in the private sector than in the government. These must be mastered and integrated into our alliance so we can indeed regain the advantage. At this early point, Force Design 2030 and similar efforts have more questions than answered. These questions must be answered with the aid of expanded simulation technologies, integrated from tactical to campaign levels across a multi-domain environment, incorporating live exercises and covering all functions to reveal both opportunities and areas that must be strengthened. Indo-PACOM's effort to integrate all existing range and simulation capabilities across that command's area of responsibility will greatly aid this effort. These integrated exercise and simulation means can be aided by infusion of advanced techniques and capabilities. At the top of our governments, organizations must be created in both Japan and the United States to gain and maintain the attention and participation of high-level decision makers and to acquire the needed resources to maintain momentum. In days past, when we only had 3 conflict domains, air, land, and sea, to worry about, we could afford a leisurely tempo of 1 or 2 major war games every year. Analog systems looked at force ratios and such things, calculated needed logistics, and generally concluded that we won. We're not in that period anymore. RAND war games of recent years show that we lose. The addition of conflict in space, cyberspace, and electronic warfare creates literally lightning fast interaction and exponentially increasing complication. Citing just one example, network attack and network defense are now major command and national leadership concerns demanding training while we are still in an interwar era. National leadership in Japan, the United States, and Australia, and perhaps others, should establish standing, active government structures properly resourced to pursue continuous wargaming in pursuit of modernized command and control, to integrate all sensors and shooters and make decision at machine speed so we may counter the superior number of forces we face. We're in a period of big change where we know the old ways must be replaced. We must begin now with concurrent and rigorous analysis as it's handmaiding. Thank you for your time and attention.
General Gregson, thank you very much for a concise and yet comprehensive analysis and recommendation of the subject matter. I know that not many people can do that, so thank you very much. I would like to ask General Nicholson to make his commentary.
Thank you. Again, General Gregson, thanks for really insightful comments there. And I know a lot has been written recently about General Berger's new direction. And let me provide a few comments for you. You know, after nearly 2 decades of war in Iraq and Afghanistan, there's no question that the U.S., we took our eye off the ball. What was previously a largely ground-centric Chinese military has become a modern force capable of competing in the air, at the sea, in space, and in cyber. And I saw also firsthand the corrosive effects of Chinese economic and military growth into the region. As the 3MEF commander, I had to visit many of our allies and often had the opportunity to sit down with some of the most senior leaders in the country. In one such country, I sat down with the Minister of Defense, who leaned forward to me and asked if we could do a little more training with his naval infantry. My comment was, absolutely, Minister, we are eager and anxious to train with your soldiers. And then he leaned a little further forward and said, we just can't let China find out about it. And I think that was an epiphany for me. It was a wake up for me. You know, I had previously served in the Pacific, where anytime U.S. Marines, sailors, soldiers, or airmen participated in an exercise, it was front page news in that nation's capital. Everybody wanted to showcase the fact that they were training with U.S. forces. And I think we've reached a point where there's still an interest in training with U.S. forces, but they kind of want to keep it on the down low. They don't want it to be advertised. I saw every day in Okinawa Japanese fighters responding to incursions in airspace, and I saw Japanese Coast Guard and maritime self-defense vessels responding consistently to incursions near the Senkakos and the Southwest Islands into Japanese sea space. You know, Commandant Conway, General Conway, our great previous commandant, when asked once, why does the Marine Corps in Afghanistan and Iraq look like the Army? You're organized into regiments, regimental combat teams, and you look just like the Army. And his answer, I think, was very prophetic. The commandant said, we are organized this way to fight this way because this is what our nation needs us to do. But it does not define who we are as a Marine Corps. And as soon as this is over, we will get back to our amphibious roots. Well, we are certainly moving in that direction with General Berger's guidance. I came to Okinawa, I came to Japan in 2015 as the new 3MEF commander, and nearly just weeks after my arrival, I first met Admiral Scott Swift. And Admiral Scott Swift began talking about naval battle. And he began talking about how the Marine Corps and the Navy would work together. You know, Dave Berger, current Commandant General Berger, was the commander of 1 MEF in California. I was the commander of 3 MEF in Japan. And we began what I consider a tutorial by Admiral Swift and his team into thinking about concepts like EABO, Expeditionary Advanced Base Operations. And I think I will tell you that Admiral Swift lit a fire under us. Both General Berger and I began working feverishly on developing concepts for EABO. How would you do that? How would you do the sorts of things that Admiral Swift had asked us to do? And in 3MEF, we immersed ourselves in the development of EABO concepts, working closely with our 1MEF counterparts. The concepts of inside force, working in a weapons engagement zone, contact force, mobility, as General Gregson talked about. But, you know, here, tactical mobility provides strategic advantage. How do you move that inside force around and preserve it so it does not get attacked? You know, I spent a lot of time in 3MEF also working in Korea. And I will tell you that I knew precisely what General Scaparrotti and General Brooks, the U.S. Forces commander there, I knew what they wanted 3MEF to do. We rehearsed it. We planned it. We had planners with his staff almost consistently. We had large, realistic scale exercises. We rehearsed everything from embarkation to the logistics impact of our movements, to the impact of how we would do a non-combatant evacuation and how we would treat the flow of refugees across the border. There was not a scenario in Korea that we had not thought about, prepared for, and often trained for. And if I look at the Senkaku scenario, and I used to talk about this with our senior Japanese leaders, we never trained to fight together. We never worked closely enough together. And I think we can do a much better job here in terms of working together with our Japanese partners. And for me, in many ways, this starts in Okinawa. You know, I've said, and I briefed Minister Kono on this, but as you travel around mainland Japan, you see joint bases. All of our bases are joint, whether it's Yokota, whether it's Yokosuka, Etsugi, even Iwakuni. You come to Okinawa and you see the bases that are still highly segregated. If I'm a Japanese citizen and I stand outside the gates of Yokota Air Force Base, I see Japanese airmen and U.S. airmen working together, arriving together, training together, and I take great comfort from that. If I'm in Okinawa and I stand outside the gates of Camp Schwab, I don't see any Japanese involvement. And I think what I see is a continuous laydown of post-war, settlement, and no great. I don't see the alliance in action. Now we're doing a better job. I know we're training some Japanese forces at Camp Hansen, but I think we can do so much better. I'm very excited about the development of the amphibious ready deployable brigade, an incredible opportunity with great vision and leadership from the Japanese leadership to create this force. And I know General Yamazaki is a great supporter of our forces working together. And I think the ARDP provides us an opportunity to take the concepts that we are developing for EABO and work together with our Marine expeditionary units and our Marine brigades to have a stronger, more capable force. I've said all the time as the commander that we may fight tonight. That was the slogan for 3MEF, we fight tonight. My corollary was always, but we don't fight alone. We fight as part of a joint force, and we must expand that to become a more capable combined force. And I think currently our exercises like Yamasakura and others need to be harder. They need to be more challenging along all of the domains. Planning, I think we could do a better job with U.S. and U.S. naval and Japanese naval and ground and air planners working together to develop the plans, the O plans, and our tactics that that need to be rehearsed and exercised together. So I think there are opportunities there. I believe General Berger's focus on the current direction of the Marine Corps is absolutely spot on. I think he's correct. And I think we will be able to respond to these scenarios in the years ahead. And I think we'll be able to respond to any scenario that the Marine Corps would need to respond to. But there is only one existential threat to our nation, to both of our nations. And I think that General Berger is exactly the right focus for us. The shift of our force, it won't be easy, but it's critically necessary to the defense of our two great nations. I'm greatly encouraged that this effort will create a joint and combined force in the Indo-PACOM region that will be strong and capable enough to deter, if necessary, defeat our adversary. We can no longer allow politics to prevent greater close cooperation, collaboration, and combined training of our two forces. The threat is real. The time is now. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Well, thank you very much, General Nicholson, for your sharp and honest analysis and recommendation to two forces. I personally am very appreciative of the effort that you and Debbie has made to connect with the Japanese people in that context. General Gregson, would you like to respond to General Nicholson's remark?
I thoroughly endorse everything that General Nicholson said. The time is now on this, and he brought my comments were aimed at a little bit more higher level, theoretical level, but he appropriately brought it down to the working level where we need to do this and start putting this together. One of the interesting things that has happened in support of this is that since we've begun talking about this, industry has already started reacting with unsolicited proposals. And one of the things that would aid the movement of the Amphibious Rapid Deployment Brigade around the 6,852 islands that constitute the nation of Japan is something called a stern landing vessel, which promises to move around the islands like a sports car, back up to the beach. Vehicles drive off and the ship goes away. An entirely survivable prospect for moving forces around and aiding survivability. So the seeds are there. What's needed is the same thing Admiral Swift recommended, the same thing that General Nicholson recommended. We have to start doing it, and we have to establish the political, the governmental infrastructures so that we are doing it, we're measuring progress, we're holding people accountable, and we're moving forward. Just the very act of getting this going increases our conventional deterrence, and I think that's badly needed at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask General Bansho to make his comment.
Thank you very much, Akimoto-san. First of all, I'd like to express my deepest sympathy to who have been affected by the disease, such as the coronavirus and also the heavy disaster in Kyushu. And also, thank you very much, General Gregson and General Nicholson. I was so inspired from your profound and sophisticated perspective as a true professional. And your presentation reminds me of your great contributions to strengthen our alliance for many years as a true friend and true mentor. Now, it is a great honor and a privilege for me to make a few remarks. As a retired soldier, I'd like to express some comment and my awareness of issues regarding the U.S. Marine Corps Force Design 2030 and its implications for our alliance. First of all, I'd like to comment from the strategic point of view. As General Gregson mentioned, new Force Design 2030 revolutionized the future of the Marine Corps and describes that the center of gravity for the U.S. Marine Corps mission will move from a desert of the Middle East is the GWOT and counterinsurgency operations against the terrorists and Islamic extremists, to the Indo-Pacific region, where the China and Russia are acting as revisionist powers. That strategic mindset and the situational awareness are fully understandable and acceptable for us. We have to recognize that China is executing the well-prepared strategy, such as gray zone strategies, multi-domain competition, such as the Chinese cabbage strategy, or salami slice strategy in this region as well as over the world. The situation is very critical. So U.S. Marine Corps' new force transformation is really significant and important. So now I'd like to make some comment about my interpretation and impressions on Force 2030, especially in terms of the implication to the Japan-US alliance. To think about our alliance management, common strategic objectives are always in fundamental basis to synchronize our effort. In this sense, it is really essential that the U.S. Marine Corps, as well as the U.S. military armed forces, are focusing their effort on the China as the #1 challenger in the threat. I basically agree with this idea. Needless to say, Japan archipelago is getting more important strategically and geopolitically. According to the U.S. National Security Strategy or National Defense Strategy, China and Russia are strong competitors. In addition, North Korea and Iran are a threat to the United States. But 3 of these 4, China, Russia, and North Korea, are located here in the Indo-Pacific region, and Japan is the only country to directly face those 3 powers. So we developed the strategy and the program and the policy for strengthening the defense posture in this region, especially in the southern areas. This strategy, we call it the Southwestern Wall Strategy. This strategy centers around the 3 key lines of the effort. #1, first is to establish the new self-defense force camps and improve existing facilities across the Southwest Islands. And for example, the first self-defense force unit, as an ISR unit, established in the 4 years ago at the Yonaguni Islands. They're located at the extreme southwestern end of Japan and just 110 kilometers from Taiwan. And the self-defense force have constructed further camps and facilities on Amami Island, north of Okinawa, and Miyako and Ishigaki Island, south of Okinawa, with the ground defense force infantry unit and the surface-to-ship missile and the surface-to-air missile batteries are located. So this is a kind of the Japanese AT-AD. Second line of the effort is to strengthen the capabilities of the self-defense force to deploy and concentrate the rapid deployment capabilities to the southwestern regions. Third line of the effort focus on the established ARDB that the General Gregson and General Nicholson mentioned, which is the first full-scale amphibious operation capable unit of the self-defense force. And that is already established 2 years ago. According to the new force design of the U.S. Marine Corps, it was really interested in the EABO, Expeditionary Advanced Base Operation concept, and MLR, Marine Littoral Regiment Operation concept. The U.S. Marine Corps will establish the stand-in force to block China's aggression within the range and the superiority of the enemy's missile, aircraft, and other powers. So Japan's concept and the U.S. Marine Corps' concept are headed in the same direction. We are very, very pleased to work together. However, we do not promote exactly the same thing and avoid duplication to economize our effort. So we have to align each strategic concept with established common strategic objectives and examine the roles, missions, and capabilities of Japan and the United States. So in order to synchronize Japan-US strategy, we need to develop appropriate measures. So I'd like to raise some examples. One is the review and realign of the program of the host nation support and the base policy, especially as General Gregson and General Nicholson mentioned, concept of the joint use of bases and facilities by self-defense force and the U.S. forces, especially the U.S. Marine Corps in Okinawa. We understand that some programs are still proceeding based on the previous strategic environment. However, the situation in this region has changed. The role of U.S. forces in Japan is more important than ever to cope with recent situations. So we have to cooperate and strengthen the relationship between the self-defense force and the U.S. forces in Japan. Second is strengthening the C2 structures, command and control structures. We need to establish the permanent joint and bilateral command structures or operation center, co-headed by Japanese 3-star and the US 3-stars to operate, to work together in any situation from peacetime to wartime. It would be suitable to be located in Okinawa, such as Camp Courtney or so. Third is upgrading and increasing of the opportunity for bilateral and multilateral activities to demonstrate our will and determination to deter China. Based on the alliance coordination mechanism, we should conduct effective and appropriate deterrence activities, such as the amphibious training and demonstration of the exercises at the Japan or Mariana, Guam areas, or Australia's, over areas. So lastly, I'd like to hear about the 2 points to General Gregson. First question is, issue of the relations with the U.S. Army and the joint functions of the U.S. forces. In implementing Force Design 2030, will there be cooperation with the U.S. Army to execute operational role and especially EAB and long-range missile capabilities? I read that the U.S. Army is also planning to forward deploy long-range missile capabilities to cope with the recent challenges, especially after withdrawing from the INF Treaty of the United States. How should we think of a command relationship or of divisions of the load between the U.S. Marine Corps' long-range precision fire capabilities and the U.S. Army's post-INF missile capabilities? Second question is relationship or attitude with host nations, not only with Japan, but also with candidate countries and areas such as Taiwan, Philippines, Australia also. Before our deployment to unit to the southwestern island, we needed more than 10 years until completion of the necessity camp construction and organizations. So how does U.S. Marine Corps Force Design 2030 deal with the procedures and the approval process of each host nation and local populations? In conclusion of my comment, any comments, concept, plans, programs are not the goal, but just the starting points. We have to be strongly aware of how to implement those while getting rid of all obstacles. The situation is changing. Enemy will evolve. So we are always reviewing current plans and upgrading them for a better one. U.S. Marine Corps' new force design greatly inspires and motivates me. Thank you again for providing me such a precious opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, General Bansho. General Gregson, would you like to respond to General Bansho's?
I would, and General Bansho, as always, asked very perceptive questions. I can't speak for the Army. There's many more capable people than I that are inside their planning process, but they're marching, and to my knowledge, they're marching in generally the same direction with a lot of emphasis on multi-domain, and I'm quite sure that we will never find a crowded battlefield out here. We can always find better ways to work together. Host nation support and permissions and things, this gets to one of the things we have to figure out as we go forward with Force Design 2030, and that is logistical support of widely distributed mobile organizations. And our habits from the past 244 years or however many it is wholesale level logistics and massive structures to break it down from wholesale to retail. And that's not going to work anymore, because any wholesale logistics organization or installation becomes an immediate target, and surveillance being what it is and long range weapons what they are, it won't survive. So we have to become much more like Amazon now and have things just appear and have things work automatically, which gets to something I was trying to mention in conjunction with combined training. It's absolutely essential that we work at the command levels and we sort out things like, number one, we have to preserve national sovereignty. Japanese forces have to remain under the command of the Japanese government. And and U.S. forces similarly. But with that said, we have to develop the command structures that enable us to operate as a truly combined force. And then secondly, we have to recognize how fundamentally changed the speed of combat, the speed of warfighting is going to be. I mentioned that artificial intelligence, machine learning, 5G technology, quantum mechanic technology, all these other things are much more present in the private sector. Well, we have to bring them into the government sector and into the military in particular, because we are collecting probably 100 times more data than we can analyze, because we're still using humans to analyze all the data. If General Nicholson is tremendously familiar with the growth in the size of our command post in Afghanistan and Iraq, because if you have humans that have to handle everything, then you need an awful lot of humans in your major command posts. And this creates a critical vulnerability, two critical vulnerabilities that we have to escape from. The first critical vulnerability is a very large command post with radiating electronic waves and things is going to be a very worthy target, and they're not survivable. So we have to figure out how to do command and control in a different manner than we've done in the past. And the second is we need to master artificial intelligence, machine learning, all these other things, and adapt them to analysis of all the data that we can collect with all our sensors and other things in a battle. And we have to use the artificial intelligence and the machine learning to enable us to number one, not have all of our command posts in the old concept. The command post has to be everywhere and has to be nowhere as far as being a target, much like we do with the Zoom technology we're talking on now. We're in Japan, we're in the United States, we're all in medically isolated locations, or whatever you want to call it. We've become very familiar with this, and it seems to work. We have to have some kind of equivalent on the command and control side where the commander remains in charge, but he also had, we're analyzing data at the speed in which it arrives, aided by machines to turn data to information. And with information, then we have all the sensors and all the shooters mutually connected in something that looks like the Internet of Things in the civilian side, so that we can instantaneously respond to threats. We've got to start on this that we already do, and we don't even think about it anymore. The phalanx weapon systems on U.S. ships are programmed to fire automatically if their detection means tell them that a cruise missile is coming at the ship. The Aegis that we both carry can be programmed to act remotely in an anti-air battle. We have armor on tanks, or did at least at one point have armor on tanks that was called reactive armor. It would react to a sensor detecting an incoming anti-tank missile, and the armor would attack the missile in generic terms. We need to get much more sophisticated on this. We need to have a missile defense network that starts with surveillance, so we can detect launches early. And if there's a missile launch, we have to react at machine speed, not on human speed or getting a bunch of people together to figure out what the rules of engagement are. It has to be instantaneous. we're going to be fighting outnumbered, so the command and control is going to have to work that we're faster, quicker, and better than any adversary we face. The permissions, the host nation thing, I think General Bansho, that learning how to do logistics support in a retail fashion is going to be one of the ways to fix that. So I hope I answered a couple of your questions, or at least got close to the target, General Bansho.
Well, thank you very much, General Gregson. We have 20 minutes to go, and I'd like to open up a floor for Q&A. And first question goes to Admiral Scott Swift. Could you please unmute your microphone? Admiral Swift.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. First of all, to listen and to comment. I've got 3 pages of notes already. So my friend Lieutenant General Gregson, Lieutenant General Nicholson, and Lieutenant General Bansho are reasons enough to participate in this discussion. I usually leave a discussion like this somewhat concerned, just because it reminds me once again these challenges that we face. But as I look across the audience, I see my friends General Sharp, Admiral Yoda, and Admiral Carter, who has now returned to Japan. And these are mentors of mine, all 6 of these individuals. They give me great hope for the future. Certainly General Nicholson's experience informs our thoughts about how we should move forward. I think General Bansho has always been a strategic thinker as we look at the application of the resources we have to restabilize the region that we're in. A term that I have come to embrace is that we need to think strategically, plan operationally, and act tactically. What I see on the U.S. side, beyond just the military, is that we think tactically, we plan tactically, and we act tactically. And we're frustrated that we are challenged in getting ahead of the problem set that we see. A comment that, a thought that General Nicholson put in my head some time ago is what I've characterized as, certainly in the Western Pacific, that if we are not mobile from a military perspective, if we're not expeditionary, then we are not relevant to the level that we need to be in order to be effective in that challenged environment that we're in. And it brings me back to the point of the discussion here of General Berger's thought. I think it's useful to remind ourselves that prior to COVID, a number of countries in Asia and the Pacific have been more proactive in moving forward with actions and proposals to increase the stability of conditions in the Pacific. And I think this is especially important in the absence of traditional levels of U.S. leadership, which I think it's important to highlight as a challenge that we face. One example is recent initiatives on the part of the Australian government, which are heartening to me. Another is the longer commitment that we have seen in action of the initiatives from the Abe government, perhaps the most consequential being his free and open Indo-Pacific initiative. Is something we can rally around. This is an important point with respect to the subject we're discussing here. The Japanese government has already set the conditions for taking advantage of General Berger's new force design. COVID has just slowed the process of adopting and adapting it in a context that matches the advancements and integration of the Japan Self-Defense Force Amphibious Rapid Development Brigade. What I've heard is a call for action, and the 3 individuals here, the 3 generals, are clearly action-oriented individuals. I'd be interested to hear from my friends General Nicholson, General Bansho, and General Gregson, thoughts on how to accelerate the application of General Berger's vision for sustaining the security of the Pacific once COVID no longer limits the interaction between the U.S. Marine Corps and the Joint Self-Defense Force. Thank you.
Thank you, Admiral Scott. General Gregson.
Oh, thank you, Admiral Swift, for your comments and for the question. I think one of the things that would help to accelerate the implementation of this would be to establish the governmental organizations that would ensure that we maintain attention. We often start things with a good idea. We go to we work for a year or so to get good suggestions up to the senior leadership. Then we have a 2+2 meeting. Then we declare victory and promptly forget all the things that that we tried to implement. One way to do this might be if there's a grain of accuracy in my feelings about what we have to do with our command posts. In other words, to greatly demassify them, to get a layer of artificial intelligence and machine learning in there to at least do an awful lot of the first order data analysis that we need to turn it to information. Then we can start decreasing the size of our command posts. We can increase the speed of our OODA loop, if you will, if you want to go back to that thing. And we need to start doing this with the at the very senior levels, so that we get people comfortable that this is not your grandfather's war anymore, that we're into something entirely new, and to establish, like I know you've done in your career, and I see General Berger doing now, establish deadlines for when something needs to be done or answers to be given. And if you don't get the answers, then okay, get me the next guy, put him in charge, and we'll get this done. The old saying is that we can admire a problem or we can solve it. We need to get out of admiring this problem, and we need to have a combined chiefs of staff, if you will, that will push us forward on this so that we can get something done. To put it in stark terms, as everybody on this conference understands, we're outnumbered, outgunned, and outranged. And we need to get faster, better, and smarter if we're going to defeat this. And we can defeat it, but we can't defeat it by just doing a lot of chin wagging and contemplation. Try it, find something that works, keep it. If you try it and find something that doesn't work, get rid of it, find some other thing, and keep moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have questions lined up, but just want to ask General Nicholson or General Bansho if you have anything to respond to.
My comments will be really brief. I think what General Berger has given us, the gift that he has given us, is calling attention to this scenario, and he's given us a moment in time opportunity, an opportunity to reset the way we train, reset the way we organize with respect to Japanese and American forces. And I think we have to seize that opportunity. I would start, Admiral Swift, and again, thanks for your great comments, but I would start by getting our best and brightest young officers together as planners, and I would bring 7th Fleet in. I would ask the Japanese Self-Defense Force, for their best and brightest, and I'd lock these guys up for weeks, if not months at a time. I think wargaming is important. I wonder how many Japanese representatives were at the RAND war game. I suspect not many, if any. And I think, industry is doing some great work, but I think it's up to us as the senior leaders in the Pacific to get our best and brightest together, give them some tasks, put them in a room, and let's start wargaming. And that can be followed on by exercises. But I think we have to seize this opportunity that General Berger has given us. And time is fleeting. Thank you.
Thank you, General Nicholson. General Bansho, do you have any
Yes.
comment?
Thank you very much, Admiral Swift. Actually, coronavirus was a so serious problem, not only for the individual, society, country, and the military, but most important thing and the fundamental mission for us is to defend our country and to secure the peace and stability of this region. So that's why we have to maintain readiness, skills, and our cooperation to cope with the situation. Even in the outbreak of the coronavirus beginning of this year, Beijing and China continue their provocative activities very so frequently. So that's why we have to demonstrate and we have to send a message that we are always, Japan and the United States are cooperated. And one more thing is in spite of the coronavirus measures, we need resources and we need budget. So we always have to ask the policy side and the government and Congress, the security, even in such situation is very important. And we do not delay and we do not reduce our capabilities in spite of the coronavirus. Thank you.
Thank you, General Bansho. I would like to ask Major General Adachi to ask a question.
Thank you, Akimoto-san. General Gregson, thank you for your insightful views regarding Japan-US Alliance. In 2013, it was decided that Ground Self-Defense Force needed its own amphibious capabilities. Since then, the U.S. Marine Corps has generously supported the Japan Ground Self-Defense Force. And so, from the bottom of my heart, I would like to say thank you to them. So due to the tremendous amount of cooperation and support from the U.S. Marine Corps, the amphibious capability of the Self-Defense Force has improved considerably in just a short period of time. Currently, we are striving for the increased cooperation with the U.S. Marine Corps through joint exercises, such as Iron Fist, Talisman Saber, Kamandagu, and others. Until recently, many Japan Ground Self-Defense Forces pilots, crew chiefs, and maintenance personnel had been receiving training at the U.S. Marine Corps Air Station New River using Japanese B-22s. This week, so the first B-22 is supposed to be delivered to the Camp Kisarazu. So in this era of the great power competition, we have to compete and fight in a contested A2AD environment. I believe that Marine Corps' fighting concept, new concept, is way ahead. The EABO, Expeditionary Advanced Base Operations, and force design to integrate with the US Navy, who conduct the Maritime Distributed Operations, MDO, is a right path forward. Our Ground Self-Defense Force is also proceeding with the transformation so that we can carry out the new concept of cross-domain operations, which enables us to operate in all domains. So I have a question. So my question is very simple. So now it's Japan Ground Self-Defense Force and the US Marine have very similar fighting concept of EABO or Loki or our Ground Self-Defense Forces cross-domain operations. However, the US Marine is more important, make importance of integration with Navy, or the EABO concept is to support Navy operations, such as distributed maritime operations. So my question is that whether Japan Ground Self-Defense Force and the US Marine Corps have a room for shoulder-to-shoulder cooperation in the new, in the island chains of the Western Pacific. So if yes, I believe so, but how to cooperate? How should we do for cooperation?
Thank you very much. Admiral Koda, I see your hand, and I promise that I'll get to you. We have 5 minutes left, but with the agreement of a participant, I'd like to extend the session a little bit, but you are all busy people, so please feel free to tune out, and if it's necessary. And apologize for rudeness to the speakers by saying that, but you know, there are two important people asking questions. So I like to, with your permission, I'd like to extend this session by 10 minutes. So General Gregson.
To answer General Adachi's question on how we can work together, we have to get into the same battle space. We have to be able to be looking at the same targets. We have to be able to react instantly. There are issues to this. We've been trying to achieve better interoperability for years. We're familiar with the challenges. We need help from the top of the government to break the industrial lock that we're stuck in, so that Japanese anti-ship missiles, U.S. anti-ship missiles, anti-air missiles, ground combat and everything is all one fight, and we're all in the same command and control networks, the same battle space.
Thank you very much. Third question goes to Mr. Kanehara. Could you unmute your microphone, please?
Thank you very much, Akimoto-san. Very happy to see General Gregson and General Bansho and Admiral Swift. My question is quite a simple one. I fully agree with every point made by these generals. We have to enhance missile capabilities, radars and sensors and unmanned vehicles under the sea and the surface and the air, multi-domain warfare. But still, I have a big concern. Is it enough to deter China? Not today, but 10 years later. During the Cold War, our ground forces, air forces were supposed to defend Hokkaido for several weeks. During this time period, the 7th Fleet, our Maritime Self-Defense Force, was supposed to bring back TRIMF and I-Corps from Hawaii and Seattle. We had to fight for several weeks, sustain ourselves in Hokkaido. Can Taiwanese do that? 10 years later, China might think that they can finish the war very quickly. And if they do, we can't. If they think in that way, we can deter them. Ground forces available are only Marines in Okinawa. And can we truly engage our forces fully, including Marines and Air and Navy, and deter Chinese from the adventurous acts, believing that the quick victory is possible?
Thank you. General Gregson.
Kanehara-san, it's wonderful to see you again, and I love that shirt. And you always have a tendency to ask what you call very simple questions, which are very profound. We need to be able to, one of the reasons that General Berger is working on the contact force and developing concepts that are effective and allow survivability and all these things is the very problem that you state, that getting forces from someplace else in the event of a conflict is going to take some time. On the other hand, if, as we're driving toward with General Berger's concept, if what Admiral Davidson's driving forward with the Regain the Advantage plan is if we can maintain, if we can prevent, if we can do sea control or sea denial and air superiority or denial of air superiority in the water spaces around the first island chain and the water spaces to the west of Japan, the east of Japan, then we get to, we buy the time that we need. The first thing to winning in the end is don't lose early. And we have to be prepared to contest any attempts to achieve adversary sea control in the areas around Japan, sea control and air control. And that's what we're working with this widely distributed, operationally resilient force structure that we're striving to create.
Thank you very much. Last question goes to Admiral Koda. Could you please unmute your microphone? Thank you.
Thank you very much, especially for 3 generals and also 1 admiral with a good comment. I have basically 2 questions. And the first, in the United States Armed Forces, say Navy Marine Corps team is a kind of the autonomous the force that have naval sea lift capability, sea control, the marine air and Navy tactical air and everything. But in Japan, JGSDF has only a small brigade size of the ground unit. So when we plan, we mean the US and Japan plan for the future war plan or campaign plan, how do we adjust those differences? Now, saying is easy. Saying joint operations is easy, but really, the culture and nature of the US Marine, history of the US Marine, and the newly born, the amphib force of JGSDF is totally different. So in the future, first thing for 2 services to do is to adjust those differences. But if you have any idea, just tell me or tell us. And second is, the role of the Navy, especially for any amphib operations, taking the sea control prior to that is a kind of essential thing or must do thing. And my question is, when the Marine or General Berger developed the Marine 2030, what kind of the coordination between US Navy and the Marine were conducted, for the future, what type of coordination between the US Marine Navy or joint forces and the JMSDF, JGSDF, and Japanese joint forces are necessary to conduct a fully functioning the bilateral amphib operations? Those are my 2 questions.
Thank you very much, General Gregson.
Chip.
Looks like he's been frozen. General Nicholson, would you like to pinch hit?
We need to.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Chip, we lost you first 30 seconds or so. Could you start again?
Okay, well, I was thanking Admiral Koda for staying up late to talk to us, and then to get to the answer of how we adjust to the differences among the Japanese forces and the American forces is get the collection of our best and brightest more junior officers together and give them a problem to work on and have them get the answer. It's something that's going to be driven much more bottom up, and the more we do combined training together, the more we'll be able to, the smart guys will be able to figure out how to do the differences. On the second question, let me hasten to include that the Air Force and the U.S. Army will be in this fight also, and the contributions they make need to be added into this according to the same battle concepts that they're developing. The Air Force does a great, pays a lot of attention to operations under attack from their airfields. They're developing alternate basing plans and all these things. So that's got to be factored into it. But the the fundamental nature of the U.S. Marine Corps, as you well know from your time as an instructor at our Naval Academy, is as an extension of sea power. We're an extension of the seaborne power ashore, the landward component of the Navy, if you will, and designed to move not quite as fast as a ship, but with our own speed of advance, able to support operations of the fleet. And if we're talking about sea control and air control, we think that there's a contribution to make from the land to ensure air and sea superiority around Japan. A lot of it is attitudinal. A lot of it is getting the Marine Corps after, what, 13, 14, nearly 20 years of combat in Iraq and Afghanistan to get the leadership of the Marine Corps fully attuned to operating as part of America's sea power component inside the joint force. And I'm optimistic that we're getting there. The pages of the Marine Corps Gazette are filled with opinions, arguments, and things from junior officers talking about just this factor. And I predict we'll be able to make this turn pretty quickly, especially with General Berger lashing the senior leadership to get on with meeting his demands.
Thank you very much. I just see two fingers from a special friend, and this is going to be the very last question. General John Dolan.
Well, thank you, sir. This will be quick, and I appreciate everyone's time, and it's great to see so many great familiar faces. I really more of a comment, and it kind of comes behind the tails of General Gregson, and about when we look strategically going forward, and Admiral Swift and I have talked about this recently, is it really is going to be an all-domain discussion, and it is just like General Berger has done with the changes in the Marine Corps. It's a different mindset of warfare, and it's threat driven, and it's great to see that we have our allies and partners in Japan thinking along those same ways. And I'll just leave the group with a thought that as we go forward, is these are great conversations to talk not only in a single domain, but to start thinking about how we include all the domains, and then how do we have interoperability with Japan. And that is going to be so critical going forward, and the U.S. side is going through the same processes, and so now it's a perfect time to be hand in hand with our Japanese mates going forward on this. So thanks again for the time, and appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, General Dolan, and thank you very much for all the participants and the speakers. As I said at the beginning, mission of Sasakawa Peace Foundation USA is to strengthen the ties between Japan and the United States for the good of a free and open international community. And obviously, 1 hour and 15 minutes is not good enough to talk about this important subject matter. And we'd like to continue to have events like this and promote discussions among influential, important policymakers and thoughtful thinkers in the future. So let me conclude by thanking you. I know that there are so many events focusing on U.S. Japan policy related subject matters, but I hope that this event has met your expectation. So thank you very much to General Gregson, General Nicholson, and General Bansho, and all the other participants. So thank you very much.